Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
All right, happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. It's a faith-filled, freedom-loving, fantastic, we're taking America back, one heart, one mind, one issue at a time Friday show. And I've got Dr. Scott Bradley with me, freedomsrisingsun.com. We're taking tidbits from his weekly Q&As on the Constitution every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. The good doctor takes questions from the public, and then he turns those questions into constitutional answers to the best of his ability. He uses the Federalist Papers, Anti-Federalist Papers, George Tucker, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, Scripture, everything else within his grasp to answer the questions. And so the reason that we bring them up on Fridays is because after the fact, you know, the whole big discussion is boiled down. All the questions, let's say there's 5 questions about a certain topic, then he kind of boils them into a single question in his effort to, streamline it all. But at the end of the day, he gets all these questions and he answers them. But then we come back and kind of, get my opinion on them and my take and let Dr. Bradley kind of synthesize it into a cogent answer that makes sense for kind of an extended listener group. And that's the goal. But the point that I'm getting at is this is where Sam Bushman and Dr. Scott Bradley say, you know what? We have a lot of opinions ourselves. Everybody knows it. We talk a lot. Everybody knows it. But we want to hear what you, the public, have to say. And this is a chance where you guys bring up the issues and then we try to respond to them the best we can. I don't know how many talk shows do that, but I certainly think it's big time a rarity. Now, sometimes a talk show will take a call and then argue with the caller and create Jerry Springer radio, that kind of stuff. But we try to take the questions and try to really ponder and think about and research our answers in meaningful ways using the supreme law of the land, the Constitution as our guide, using the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, using Scripture, using all the different tools at our disposal in modern times. Oftentimes we can look back at history and, we get some 20/20 vision to the best of our ability when we do that. And I know we're not perfect at it, but we try hard to truly deliver you the founding father-esque viewpoint on given topics. We try to take their legacy and bring it forward in modern times and apply their incredible think tank of understanding to the issues at hand today. The question is, hey, do you guys got some predictions for the midterm elections? And what about the 2028 election, huh? Doctor, let's start there, sir. Welcome.
Well, it's like I said in the discussion, I says, the 2028 election, I mean, they're what, 20 months away, something like that. And
yes,
that's an eternity in a political sense.
Well, and the midterm elections are even shorter than that. We're on them, buddy.
Oh, well, that's true, but
they're happening now in primaries and everything else, right?
Well, in fact, that's true. And let's just start right there. There's been a number of special elections for state legislative bodies that have happened in that last few weeks, okay? Replacing somebody in a state legislature. I do not personally, maybe I've overlooked something, so I'll admit that as a possibility, but I have not seen a single solitary Republican take one of those. And now the people's excuse is, they were going to be Democrats anyway. What are you worried about? I mean, it's a foregone conclusion as Democrat. Maybe not. But not a single Republican, to my knowledge, has taken a special election for a state legislative position in recent times. And then you look at what's going on in Texas, for example, where Cornyn, an establishment drone that really does not reflect, in my opinion, a sound constitutional government. He was in a primary. In Texas, they had 3 guys running for his Senate job. And Texas has a law that says if you have a primary, which they just had, and one of the individuals does not come to a 50% or more, you have to run the 2 top vote getters together. So there's a special runoff, if you will, in May for these 2 guys, Cornyn being one of them. And the Senate has this huge fund. It's a keep incumbents in office fund,
which, by the way, is vote fraud straight up.
Yeah, they've put millions upon millions upon millions of dollars into this race to keep Cornyn in there. Well, this other guy was just a hair's breadth behind him, And now they're going to have this runoff election in May. Now, Trump,
and that's Ken Paxton, and that's if they don't talk Ken Paxton out of dropping out first. That's another topic, but go ahead.
That is correct. I mean, all of these moving parts are in this thing. Trump, to this point, unless it's happened this morning, had not endorsed either one of them, but he's planning on doing it. My guess is it'll go with Cornyn because he's the incumbent, and they get the wink and the nod because they know they got him in their pocket anyway. So anyway, it's really kind of up for grabs. And the Democrat that's running is a young, relatively articulate guy. He's a person that has really got some weird, bizarre beliefs. Like, for example, he believes the trans movement needs to have abortion protection. So what? I don't know what the heck. But at any rate, so there's this thing where you may get this weird Democrat in there, because the Republicans are going to go to each other's throats until May, and they're spending money that of course, it'll get reimbursed quickly by the establishment crew. But at any rate, some of these things are really kind of up for grabs. Here's kind of what I think. And it's opinion, and you can't predict with the crystal ball with any degree of accuracy, but you can look at political trends and so on. There's a razor-thin majority for the Republicans in both House and the Senate. They're basically in Trump's pocket. Trump has got a free pass because these guys have been so complicit and complacent. I think there's a very high possibility. I'm not going to say absolute probability, but I think there's a high possibility that the House may be flipped to Democrat in the midterms. If that happens, Trump will face regular resolutions about his impeachment. I'm not going to say every day or every week, but maybe every month. There might be 12 months of constant wrangling to get him impeached over this or that or the other. Some of them are probably more valid than others, like this war thing. So at any rate, this is something that he seems almost determined, bent on destroying the Republican majority there, and it may be so that he can have an inactive Congress again. I don't think the Senate is going to be flipped. I don't think that the dynamics will allow that. But some of these things, like this Texas thing I just mentioned, show that there is some risk in the Senate to lose some of that, but I don't think it'll flip it. Okay.
Well, what about even this Mark Wayne Nolan guy or whatever? That's going to be another question, right? Unless we for sure get a good solid guy there.
Well, here's what happens.
Might be in jeopardy now.
He's from Oklahoma, which is solidly Republican.
Yeah.
And the Republican governor there gets to appoint for an interim for the new senator once this Mark Wayne Mullen gets.
In other words, create an incumbent, if you will.
That's right. He will give the new individual he appoints the power of incumbency. And so that individual will have a power base to operate from whenever they do have his special election. My belief is probably, well, let's just all do it in November. And so this new person will be able to sit in the office for that many months. And when the
that big war chest that you mentioned is available to all of the incumbents, right?
Correct. And so there's, to me, I don't think that's as big a risk for Republicans or for Trump. I think that he'll probably get his person in there.
It may not, but I'm just telling you, it creates a greater chance, though, that people are going to say, hey, now I'm not really a fan of this Mark Wayne guy in the first place, but I'm just kind of making a point that, we're making too many. All I can tell you is this: if you have a bunch of possibilities, any one of them could rise up to be the trigger or the change or the difference. The more of those you have, the greater opportunity, right?
Absolutely. And here's some things that are kind of wild cards or dark horse kind of things that could come out of the woodwork. Number one, of course, is the economy. The economy is really in a kind of a bigger crappy mode. If you've been listening to any of the things, Trump's been touting the Dow is at all-time highs and all this. It's really fallen off recently pretty substantially. And I think a lot of Americans, to them, I mean, when you have a Kristi Noem making almost $250 million advertising campaign for her department, people are having trouble buying groceries. They're having trouble buying gas. They're saying, I can't afford my insurance, all that kind of stuff. Domestic things are not hunky-dory right now. So the economy is probably where a lot of people will cast their votes. But something that just got started last weekend was this war. If we start losing, now I remember the days we were losing 200, 300, 400 Americans in a week in Southeast Asia. And people were saying, what the heck are we doing there? I mean, this is the kind of thing that unseated LBJ. I mean, Lyndon Baines Johnson did not run again. He backed out. And that put Nixon in. Nixon turned tail and ran after him.
All right, we're going to come back and talk about this a little bit more, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm telling you right now, both Republicans and Democrats are taking a beating. Incumbents are taking a beating this time. We've seen that over the last several primaries recently as well. I wonder what's going to happen. We'll talk about it more in a second.
In the medical field, IT security is crucial. Our highly skilled consultants are HIPAA certified and have 20 plus years of experience servicing medical clinics, billing, and supply companies. We offer comprehensive endpoint protection, guarding your computers and servers against all stages of threats. And with our 24/7 monitoring services, you'll never worry about extensive downtime again. Ready to level up your IT support? Call 801-706-6980 today and discover how great IT services can be with managed IT services.
Step into the boots of the American West with Range Magazine, where grit meets grace. This is a front row seat to the stories, struggles, and triumphs of ranchers, farmers, and stewards of the land. From jaw-dropping photography to no-nonsense reporting, Range brings you the untold tales of life on the range. Whether you're a city dweller with a cowboy's heart or living life where the pavement ends, Range speaks to the soul of the West. Subscribe today at rangemagazine.com.
As the United States boldly stepped forward in the glorious light provided by its new Constitution in 1787, the nations of the earth were in awe of the newfound strength and hope of this free land. Today, the nation stands at a crossroads. A divergence from the original intent put forth in the United States Constitution has brought grave threats to our beloved nation. A miracle is needed if the United States is to survive. That miracle is again the pure application of the United States Constitution. I'm Scott Bradley. In my To Preserve the Nation book and lecture series, I bring forth truths that will help raise up a new generation of statesmen like those noble Americans who founded this land. Vigorous application of these principles will invigorate and restore the nation, and we may become again the freest, most prosperous, most respected, and happiest nation on earth. Visit topreservethenation.com to begin that restoration.
Well, this thing about the upcoming elections is really kind of it's a brawl. I mean, I hate to call it that, but it's almost a barroom brawl. I mean, we got people breaking chairs over each other's heads. I mean, Trump is throwing Republicans out, trying to anyway. I mean, whether it's Massey or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Rand Paul, I mean, these are Republicans that don't toe the line with his personal preferences every time. And he's acting as though he is a monarch that can clear the parliament out anytime he darn well pleases. And in a way, I think he's being his own worst enemy because he's creating opportunities for dissension that ultimately and finally will, I mean, unless he gets a fully monotheistic kind of belief system going into there, he's going to have an enemy in every camp. But he keeps doing what he darn well pleases every time he does it. So these elections right now, these razor-thin margins are at stake. And I think if he does get that, the point where the House gets flipped, it's going to be a mighty difficult extra few years or a couple of years anyway.
It is, and I think what's interesting about this is it's almost like the Republicans have already conceded, Doctor. If you hear kind of statements from some of these leaders and everything else, they're kind of like, oh, yeah, that's just inevitable, kind of an attitude. And on one hand, they say they want to fight and make their people stay. But everything that they're doing, in my opinion, seems to be the opposite. I think they've kind of already decided, and this is kind of why Pat Buchanan said this is a left and right wings of the same bird of prey. In other words, you've really got one party, and they literally share power. And it's like, hey, it's kind of your turn to control the House. Hey, it's your turn to control the Senate for a while. Hey, we get both of them. Hey, we get everything for a while. Hey, now it's going back to you. It almost seems like behind the scenes, that's the truth. Now, I wish it wasn't so, and I don't have evidence or proof of that, except for what I've seen over the last, my whole lifetime, is that, hey, every time, instead of capitalizing on what you could do, I'll give you a quick example. The education department. Hey, I thought we were going to get rid of that thing. Anyway, now Bobby Kennedy's working with it and preserving it. We'll tell you about that coming up, but go ahead. All I'm telling you is that it seems like they're sharing power on purpose, Doctor.
Well, it really, there's a greater collegiality there than they want you to believe, and they talk about the turkeys this and the turkeys that. But honestly, so little changes. And I look at our congressional delegation in our state, for example. Empty suits, one and all. I mean, they're a sure vote for Donald Trump. They're a sure vote for the establishment. They're a sure vote for the next recess that they're going to take.
And now Owens is out, right?
I don't know. I mean, here's the deal. I don't see a single solitary reason for them to even be in office. There is nothing that comes out of that other than a sure vote for Don Trump.
For the establishment. But
right,
whether that
the
be Donald Trump or
establishment.
not, it seems to be the establishment. And it seems like as President Trump goes along, he becomes more establishment minded in my mind over time. He talks a lot about really doing things that shake things up. But at the end of the day, the more we talk about the change, the more it stays the same. But I think Owens is out. And that's why I really question if they're going to hold on to the Senate too. Too many people are leaving and they're redistricting Owens's district to where it'll very likely be a Democrat that'll pop into there, Doctor.
Well, there is an awful lot, and that's an absolutely crazy thing we could talk about at great length, too, about the redistricting stuff. What the Californians have done, what the Texans have done, and what basically has been compelled upon Utah by court decree. And really, everything is up for grabs right now.
The bottom line, though, is this. These parties are literally election fraud. They get special privilege. Some group creates a party, then they get special privilege, and then they create laws and protections to where, hey, you can't get them out. You can't start a third party. You can't do anything without being part of a party and everything else. And so these parties and these redistrictings and these, mandated gerrymanderings of, whoever side you want to take on the thing, each side complains the other side's the bad guy. But at the end of the day, these parties really control elections by their gerrymandering, by their partisan politics and keeping incumbents in with big war chests and rules and laws and edicts and mandates and everything else that protect certain situations and people and everything else from any real challenges. And I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I simply say, hey, if you really want to stop the election fraud, first thing you got to do is get rid of parties, Doctor.
Yeah, the parties were what a bane to freedom, and the founding fathers all talked about that. But we can't overlook what the war that's currently started could do to this election, this upcoming midterm. I mean, back in 1968, that was Tet and everything else like that. But that year we lost 16,900 Americans. In that year, 16,000, my friends. And it's like...
You're talking a whole small city.
Lyndon Johnson could not... he couldn't hold up anything then. And that allowed Richard Nixon to get in, and Henry Kissinger did his so-called decent interval capitulation in Paris. Ultimately, we withdrew. We got out of with about as disastrously as we got out of Afghanistan. And people say, oh, that can't be. I remember equipment that we left behind that was extremely, we left, how do you say, boatloads? Huge cargo ships full of equipment, and we just walked away. We pushed helicopters off the side of decks of carriers. Almost 17,000 Americans died. And if we start taking huge casualties in this war, or even any, 6 is too many, my opinion.
I will say this, and wrapping up the war discussion, at least for today, I will say this. I pray for the Iraqis that they have liberty. I pray for the American people that are Iranians, that they have freedom. I pray that the American people don't lose their children in war. I pray for peace everywhere. And so, what's done's done. Trump's already done the action. Now the question is, how do we handle it when it comes to the midterms, and how do we handle it going forward? I think Congress should have stepped up. They did not, but it's very, very difficult. But if we're not careful, we're going to lose sight of the Epstein files. And that's what Marjorie Taylor Greene got kind of kicked out over, that and a couple of other things. But Thomas Massey now is going to have a tough time in his election, I think, because of that same kind of an issue. But now the DOJ, the Department of Justice, releases more Epstein files. And I guess there's some details about a woman accusing Trump now that got accidentally left out last time, Doctor. Accidentally. Well, sorry about that.
How do those things happen? I can't imagine, and Trump keeps saying that he's been exonerated. That's his word. And he's been cleared of all, anything that could have been wrong. Well, Bravo Sierra. I mean, there were like 3 million documents that were released, the latest out. And now we're finding out there's about 3 million, 2.5 to 3 million more. And in this particular one, this gal, claims to have been raped multiple times by an individual. I think she was in North Carolina when it happened. She didn't know his name. And when Epstein was arrested in 2019, a friend of hers sent her a picture of him, and she says, yeah, that's the guy. And so she was interviewed by the FBI 4 times. Now, I've been interviewed a number of times. I guess I'd have to sit down and try and figure it out. A number of times.
Hold on, different reasons, though. Let's be clear.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that endorsement. At any rate, no, this was over some fraudulent activities by an organization that I have some pretty deep insight on. At any rate, so they do some thorough interviews, and so I don't know how many pages they took each time, but they interviewed her 4 times, and apparently. The only thing that got into the latest release was a summary. Now let's say they had 4 times and they had 25 pages of notes each time, so 100 pages maybe got summarized down to a few paragraphs, or maybe in a page. And in that, she claims that Donald Trump assaulted her and she bit him. That's how detailed this is. And you look at the DOJ and they say, oh my goodness, yeah. Oh boy, sorry about that. We thought this was a redundant, kind of record. And so we didn't think it was necessary to put in, and blah, blah, blah. And suddenly you're going, okay, so if you...
And how many of those exist in a 3 million page release, may I ask?
Absolutely. Did you absolutely overlook it, or did you do it purposely? And so it raises questions about a lot of things.
Because I think they were hoping that when the first release happened, and all the excuses and then the different things that are going on, I think they hoped that people wouldn't still be pushing. And so they kind of thought, hey, it might escape it. Now they're pushing, and so now there's little bits come out. The question becomes, if we keep pushing, how much more will come out? How many other accidents or unintentionals or whatever else are going to get exposed? I mean, this thing reeks to high heaven, Doctor, is the problem.
Well, and we're seeing, and we've talked about this before, about how in Europe there's some fallout. I mean, a guy gets deposed from being a prince. I mean, we have ambassadors that are being set aside. World Economic Forum, the CEO of that has been booted. We look at stuff in France for individuals that had high-level positions in, pretty high society. Norway has just arrested one of their individuals. I mean,
well, and we have no problem in America though, because Bill Gates just said, "Oh, I know I was with 2 different Russian hookers. Sorry about that." And now Bill Clinton and Hillary testify, and I mean, she used to talk about bimbo eruptions, and now she says she didn't even really know Jeff. And well, then Jeff was at one of her, her daughter's wedding, and she's just like, "Oh, he was there as a +1, didn't even know him." Is that really truthful? Then Bill Clinton gets in there and he basically, it's all behind closed doors. How much are we getting of that? I mean, I'm telling you, this Epstein file thing has got legs and wings like you wouldn't believe. But I'm convinced in America there's two-tiered system. These people that are above the law will not get any accountability because there's not enough people in the right places demanding it. They'll dribble out this, and dribble out that, and dribble out this and make it last forever. Pretty soon a Democrat president will take over and you'll never see the light of day on anything. I pray that isn't the case, but predict that is reality. Hold on, Dr. Bradley with me. You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live.
Your daily Liberty Newswire. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
Breaking news this hour from Town Hall. I'm Rich Thomason. President Trump says nothing short of unconditional surrender by Iran is acceptable to the U.S. The declaration comes as American and Israeli forces show no mercy to Iran's military-backed dictatorship.
Israeli airstrikes are pounding the capitals of Iran and Lebanon as the US apparently struck an Iranian drone carrier at sea, intensifying its campaign targeting the Islamic Republic's warships. Iran launched new retaliatory attacks early Friday against neighbouring countries that host US forces. There have been no immediate reports of casualties. Tehran has warned of the destruction of the Middle East's military and economic infrastructure, and the war has rattled financial markets. The latest strikes mark a full week of attacks affecting countries across the Middle East. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
And some of the Americans trapped in the Mideast have managed to get back home, arriving at San Francisco International Airport. Kelly DeGarmo tells KGO News that her group had to try for multiple flights before finally getting one that wasn't canceled.
Getting stuck there. We had a flight on Sunday, canceled, Monday canceled, Tuesday canceled. And we have flights for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday still. Did we have to cancel? Everybody was very, very kind. We were told that we were very safe. The hotels were kind.
She arrived home on a flight from Dubai. February's job cuts caught the experts off guard. The Labor Department says employers shed 92,000 employees last month. Economists had been predicting 50,000 jobs added. The February unemployment rate holding steady at approximately 4.4%. On Wall Street this morning, stocks are sharply lower in the wake of that jobs report, as well as the ongoing war in the Mideast. The Dow down 512 points. The Nasdaq is off 183. More on these stories, townhall.com.
Have you noticed losing weight is harder than it used to be? You're eating better and exercising, but the scale barely moves? The real problem isn't willpower, it's metabolic dysfunction. And standard dieting just makes it worse. PhD Weight Loss has helped thousands fix the root cause of stubborn weight. Take their free metabolic assessment at fixmyweightloss.com. Fixmyweightloss.com. It's quick, personalized, and shows why your body is resisting weight loss, so you know exactly what to fix. Visit fixmyweightloss.com. That's fixmyweightloss.com.
My name is Whitney Allen, and I'm a widow. My husband, Ryan, died. We never thought we'd ever have to use life insurance, but the unexpected happened. With Ethos, signing up was fast and 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. No medical exams, and you can get up to $3 million worth of coverage. I'm grateful we were prepared.
Get your free quote at ethos.com/term. That's ethos.com/term. Paid spokesperson. Time spent on application may vary. Online health questions required.
Why don't we say to the government writ large that they have to spend a little bit less? Anybody ever had less money this year than you had last? Anybody ever having a 1% pay cut? You deal with it. That's what government needs, a 1% pay cut. If you take a 1% pay cut across the board, you have more than enough money to actually pay for the disaster relief. But nobody's going to do that because they're fiscally irresponsible. Who are they? Republicans. Who are they? Democrats. Who are they? Virtually the whole body is careless and reckless with your money. So the money will not be offset by cuts anywhere. The money will be added to the debt, and there will be a day of reckoning. What's the day of reckoning? The day of reckoning may well be the collapse of the stock market. The day of reckoning may be the collapse of the dollar. When it comes, I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you it has happened repeatedly in history when countries ruin their currency.
Are you ready to stand up for your community and support your local sheriff? Join the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association and become a vital member of the Sheriff's Citizens Posse. At cspoa.org, we empower citizens like you through weekly webinars, arming you with the knowledge to back your constitutional county sheriff. Together, we can uphold our Constitution and ensure liberty and justice for all. Your community needs you now more than ever.
This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would enslave this country in darkness, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in fact.
TheEpochTimes.com. All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. So this Iran war has so many tentacles to it as it continues to expand. And Iran is, a lot of the reason that it's expanding. But again, hey, once it starts, war tends to begat war, right? Peace tends to begat peace, is what I would say. But now the question that, listeners and viewers and friends around the world are asking is, why would Iran target the Mediterranean island of Cyprus? And it's a very good question. I would simply say that, hey, Iran's goal is to bring everybody into the war. Doctor?
Oh, I would disagree with that, Sam, and I'll tell you why. I think that the United States has got Iran ringed with the pointy end of the spear pointing towards their country. We have got tens of thousands of American troops on bases, and I hear all the talking heads, the shills for the war, that are talking about, oh, look, Iran is showing their true colors. They're attacking all of these other nations, and ain't it awful, they're all going to die. And the vast majority of those attacks are aimed at American assets, whether it be a military base, whether it be a consulate, whether it be an embassy. They're lobbing missiles into a lot of different places. But the vast, vast majority, why would they send it into a suburb of Jordan unless it gets misdirected somehow by being deflected by some kind of other defensive system? But the vast, vast majority of these things are because they are military assets of the United States, and the skin in the game is what the United States brought to the game. And so we put people in harm's way because we're places we shouldn't be. So let's get back to this Cyprus thing. The Cyprus thing, people go, huh? Well, the thing that's really interesting, for over 50 years, the United States has had a military asset in Cyprus. And we use that asset as a landing base for refueling, and the spying that goes out of Cyprus is that's one of its principal purposes. So we launch spy planes from Cyprus that likely have gone over and done military intelligence gathering of the different sites in Iran that people have determined we're going to bomb. We share that information with Israel, and we ourselves use it to launch against Iran. And so it's a completely natural thing for us to be there and that's a long ways away. It's in northeast Mediterranean. It's over by Israel, basically. And so Iran has targeted that. And it's because of it's an offensive weapon against Iran. And it's very interesting to me. I mean, by the way, most of the stuff that goes on there is pretty, it's a secret kind of operation. And so people call it a unsinkable aircraft carrier. It's an island in the sea, and the United States uses it as an offensive weapon against Iran. So it makes perfect sense. But to me, it has another kind of corollary kind of thing. The Gerald Ford aircraft carrier is in stealth mode off of Israel right now, and that is an offensive weapon. It's a electronic counter warfare kind of thing too, along with being able to launch weapons. And as I think about this thing, I am quite certain that they're probably looking at targeting the aircraft carrier maybe someday. I mean, they're kind of together. They're not right together. Don't get that impression, but they're over in the same area. And ultimately and finally, Iran may take it in their heart to send missiles, maybe hypersonic missiles, which I don't believe the United States can defend against at this time. They may end up sending hypersonic missiles against the aircraft carrier, which is the biggest, baddest aircraft carrier we've got. But the Cyprus thing is tied definitely into the war. And you would say, well, that's a string nobody thinks about. Most Americans don't even give consideration But we have tentacles all over the world. Is air refueling places?
I have a slightly different take on this, and that would be this. I do believe that Iran is doing communist China's bidding. I think the Muslims and the communists have been fighting over Iran for a long time, and I think Iran's leadership is certainly against America and doing the bidding of China. China and somewhat Russia are some of the single funders of Iran, and I think they realize that, hey, they can use Iran as kind of the
proxy,
to carry out a lot of their bidding. And so it's not so much that Iran necessarily, not the Iranian people by any means, but the leadership in China, hey, they want to see what they can hit of the United States. They want to basically test our ability to defend, and they want to check every, quote, front they can to see where we are and kind of poke us, so to speak, and say, hey, you know, what will the Americans do? Where's their lines? What technology will they roll out that we can possibly get a finger on? What can we, and so to me, it's a great testing opportunity for China to use Iran to broaden everything they possibly can. Now, I could be wrong, but that's kind of my take on it, Doctor.
Okay, here's the deal. Everything that happens is tipping our hand for all of our methods and operations and
exactly right.
And as our frequencies, every time you key a mic, every time you turn a piece of radar on, every time you do an ECM, electronic countermeasure, they're gathering that intelligence to be used later. So absolutely, everything that we're doing right now is giving away billions and hundreds of billions of dollars of intelligence.
And I think China wants to expand that as much as they possibly can and see, hey, where are the weaknesses? What will the Americans do? How much will they give up? How much will they crank up to defend whatever? What will they do to, et cetera, et cetera? And I think it's a huge, massive, intentional probe.
Well, then there's unintentional consequences that maybe people don't think of, but they should.
That's possible, sure.
Here's the issue. We have driven Iran, China, North Korea, and Russia into each other's arms. They've become strange bedfellows, if you will, about everything because of our economic sanctions upon everybody and because of our belligerent attitudes towards them, all in violation of the American founding fathers' attitude about foreign affairs. And we could cover that in great length and in great detail. But so what we've done is we've created a coalition that is opposing us. And it's just like we always do.
Even Vivek Ramaswamy highlighted this on the campaign stage, right?
And so here we are, we're creating our own best enemies. And we've always done that. We created the Soviet Union in so many ways. And boy, I'd love to talk about that at great length. And what we've done with Red China, we started that. We gave Mao the way of defeating the mainland by turning all Japanese armaments that were surrendered at the end of World War II over to Mao instead of Chiang Kai-shek. I mean, everything we do creates an opposition to the Americanist
even
principles.
Now, on one hand, we complain that Iran is the biggest, leader of terror in the world and been so since 1979. There may be some truth to that. However, we're funding China with a massive trade deficit. We've done so for literally 40 years. Since Ross Perot used to draw circles on the board famously saying, hey, we're going to have this sucking sound. And we've literally sent billions and trillions to China through that most favored nation trading status. We even still have a massive deficit now. And then China teams up with Russia, and they team up with other partners in banking and fund Iran. So we're really funding Iran, is the truth, even though no one wants to admit that reality check. And so we've built the greatest military the world's ever known ourselves in America. But then we've also helped build the communist Chinese military through trade. Haven't we, Doctor?
Well, indeed we have. And when the most favored nation status was given to China, we basically opened ourselves to be pillaged and plundered. But the thing is, we really are creating our own best enemies. And the establishment, the New World Order guys, the guys that want to build into one government across the whole world, are using all of these strange bedfellows kinds of things to encourage that to happen. I mean, we're our own worst enemy. Wasn't it Pogo that said, we have seen the enemy and he is us, or something like that? It's an old political cartoon in case you haven't seen it. Most people, honestly, probably it dropped off the radar decades ago. But at any rate, the enemy is us, and we're creating our own enemies. And so, yeah, it's so absolutely absurd what we're doing, and we're giving away, in fact, oh man, I wish there were time to talk about this. We're going to run out of time, I know, Sam, but we can disarm ourselves by basically firing off all our ammunition, everything, whether it's the Iron Dome.
So that's a big question right now. President Trump is trying to put together a plan to use, I can't remember what act it is, I don't have it in front of me right this second, but the act is basically designed to say, hey, we've got to talk to our weapons manufacturers and kind of crank this up for them.
Military
on one hand, Trump wants to pretend that, hey, we've got plenty of weapons and plenty of capabilities, in other words, adequate. But at the same time, they're using the Defense Production Act. You got it right, Dr. Bradley. Because we're depleting our munitions. And on one hand, Trump says we have plenty. On the other hand, he's meeting today to discuss that. How can both be true?
We ought to talk about this after this brief break we're going to have, because it is a huge challenge.
You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live, ladies and gentlemen.
Attention collectors and savvy investors. We are excited to announce a momentous evolution in our journey. Introducing Free Water Coin Company, formerly known as Rust Coin and Gift. This rebranding takes us back to the very roots of where it all began, Free Water, Oregon. It's a tribute to the legacy of Al Rust and a celebration of 3 generations of dedication to excellence in the world of coins and precious gifts. Al, Brian, and Jake Rust standing strong through 64 years of service. Discover a world of exceptional service at Free Water Coin Company, your premier destination for genuine, honest money and precious gifts. Under Brian's expert guidance, Free Water Coin Company, building on the legacy of Rust Coin and Gift, continues its tradition of trust and excellence. Visit us at our Provo, Utah location. Explore our treasures online at freewatercoinco.com or call us at 801-377-1574. Free Water Coin Company, where your future is built one honest coin at a time.
Looking for an IT partner that truly understands your needs? Managed IT Services is the answer. We meet with you regularly to discuss your goals and form a tailored technology plan. Our customers have called us a trusted advisor who delivers. When it comes to IT, we do it all. Firewalls, cloud storage, server migration, and more. Say goodbye to long-term contracts and hello to a team that earns your business month after month. Call 801-706-6980 now and let Managed IT Services transform your IT experience.
Have you ever had great honey? No, I mean really good, all-natural, raw honey? Well, now you can, thanks to localhoneyman.com. We can ship out our locally made honey all across the U.S. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Plus, Local Honeyman has so many different flavors, like Utah Wildflower, High Desert Delight, Happy Valley, and Blackberry, just to name a few. So purchase your delicious raw honey today at localhoneyman.com.
All right, so the Trump administration says, hey, we've got plenty of weapons and plenty of munitions and plenty of capabilities. Don't worry, we're not running low. But the Defense Production Act regarding the war with Iran is depleting our munitions, ladies and gentlemen. And the act would compel defense firms to prioritize manufacturing specific weapons. U.S. military stockpiles are declining rapidly, posing the risk of soon having to decide which targets to select. That could put us in a bad situation should, say, China or Russia or North Korea or a combined who knows who make a move in certain ways. It could quickly get us in trouble, Doctor. And I don't mean to be negative about this, but it's a reality we cannot ignore.
Well, that's part of the problem is we are sometimes our eyes are bigger than our stomach is what my dad used to say when we think we can do something, but we can't hold it all. It's a long story. I won't go into it. But the fact of the matter is every single asset is finite. I mean, and Israel's Iron Dome has got a finite number of missiles that might shoot up to intercept. Iran has a finite number of ballistic missiles and defense missiles and everything. The United States has a finite number of fighter jets and heavy bombers, and B-52s are maybe going to start getting lost in here if the big surface-to-air missiles can be shot against them like they were in the 1972 timeframe, brought down an awful lot of them. I mean, they're going to be dropping 2,000-pound bombs on Iran.
And whether Iran intends this or not, hey, China is probably saying, hey, let's just get the United States just to draw down all their weapons. We know they can't make weapons without us. And truthfully, it's going to be very hard for us to make a lot of the things that we depend on without China. We put too much in that Chinese, quote, breadbasket, and that's a big, big, big concern. And so if China is really driving Iran like many claim, then is that intentional on their part? Very likely, not only to exploit our technology and everything else, but also to draw down our reserves.
Well, why not? I mean, it's not just real high-tech stuff. I mean, if you look at the 155 millimeter artillery rounds, I mean, that's a mainstay to big wars. And we'd need those if we were fighting on behalf of Taiwan, for example. If China pulled a stunt over in the Formosa Straits, it's a 7,000-mile supply train. And the Iraq war drew down our 155 millimeter rounds. I would venture to guess that under current production rates, now Trump's going to try and ramp them up, it will be 10 years before we'll be able to fight a real war using some of these assets that have been severely
and even if
depleted.
you manage to crank it up, it's still going to be 5 to 7, though. You can't quadruple production like overnight or anything.
It's a real threat to the United States. And you know what? If I were an enemy of the United States, and trust me, I want our nation to survive, but we're destroying it from the inside out. I think that there's somebody out there that's probably saying, they deplete them down to a certain point. We can take them. And it might even go so far, and this sounds very, what shall I say, Chicken Little kind of attitude.
Doomsday, sure.
Somebody may say, you know what, we can even land forces on their shores. And ultimately and finally, they're so depleted they won't be able to resist us. I mean, we can wear ourselves out punching at the punching bag before we get in the ring. I mean, this kind of stuff, it seems like now, some of my friends and I for decades have been of the opinion that the United States military force and, the readiness, if you will, started to go downhill on January 20th, 1993. You say, what the heck is that? That's when Bill Clinton was inaugurated. Our military has become more woke. We've depleted our abilities to really, truly fight wars. It's been DEI to the core. We put people through West Point and Annapolis and the Air Force Academy. Wasn't there pictures of some little girls that were shot down in their fighter jets, supposedly
Yes, sir.
I mean, here we go. I mean, you look at these little
That's
girls.
how George Foreman got beat, too, is the guy just sat on the ropes and let him punch himself out of energy, and then, hey. So, that is a reality and something that we need to consider as well. I want to highlight tariffs before the end of the hour, though, too. A coalition of 24 states now, so 24 states, half the union, and it's Democratic attorney generals, which means some of the biggest states, I might add, from Oregon, New York, California, Arizona. They have all filed a lawsuit against President Trump on Thursday. The lawsuit challenges Donald Trump's new 10% tariffs on global imports, implemented under Section, 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. The states argue that Trump exceeded his authority and did not meet the criteria to invoke Section 122, which allows tariffs of 15% for 150 days. Their lawsuit claims that Trump's specifications based on the trade deficit was not valid. And they pointed out that Trump exempted certain products from certain countries from the tariffs, which they say the law does not permit. Now, the tariffs are expected to generate about $35 billion in revenue. That's if it's maintained for the whole 150 days. This lawsuit follows the Supreme Court decision last month that struck down Trump's original tariffs, which total more than $100 billion, and the administration already faces demands for repayment of those funds. And now the states previously succeeded in fighting against Trump's earlier tariffs, and now the current legal challenge differs, as Section 122 explicitly allows for tariffs, but they say Trump's definition and explanation doesn't hold muster per the law. Time will tell, but the battle's on now. Half the union, Doctor.
Well, see, here's the deal. And I said from the very beginning when Trump initiated his tariffs, and he says they're essential to the survival of the nation. I mean, he puts these dire statements on there. But I said from the very beginning that if the Supreme Court read the plain English words of the Constitution, they had to rule against him. Now, what they did is they put out a narrowly crafted, stand on the razor blade kind of thing, so that they basically were opening up another opportunity for him to use another venue that constitutionally is incorrect. Congress has to be over the authority of tariffs, and they cannot redelegate that to somebody else. But the Supreme Court, the way they ruled this last time, said, oh, you can't use this law, but maybe there's another one. Okay, so that's what Trump did. Now, here we have half the union, the states in the union are out battling this. Now, you might say, I bet you they're all blue states, and likely they are. But what you're going to find with the acrimonious world that we're in right now is that everybody has an opinion and they're going to take it to court. The real answer
and
is
most
to go
importantly,
back.
here's the sad part, is we support tariffs, Doctor. We just support them the right way, which means you got to get both branches, the executive branch and the legislative branch, involved if you want to go ahead and make them stick and make them lawful.
Well, Article 1, Section 8 is pretty clear on this thing. But what's happening is the Congress really is the key. They have been remiss in so many things, and they've allowed a president to run amok in so many ways. And it's not just this president. It's been going on for decades. Virtually all of my life.
And that's why it's hard to kind of hold Trump. I mean, I know he should understand his oath of office and everything else, but we've been living in the, quote, real, not the ideal for so long, to where he's just kind of like, hey, that's the standard and that's what I'm going to do. Congress needs to step up to the plate. And I look at most of these problems we're facing today as congressionally related. Congress is really the problem we have here, more so than even the courts, more so than even the president. I believe Congress, because they could hold the purse strings and change the game so quickly if they decided to. But they won't.
They're holding all the cards. They don't have to do what they're doing, but they're cowardly. They're empty suits. I mean,
and they
look
do
at
have
Article
to do
1.
things they're not doing.
That's right. They're more on vacation than they're working. Article 1, Section 7 tells you how you create law. Article 1, Section 1 says you're the only ones that can create law. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 says you can't spend any money unless the Congress legalizes it. All of these things.
And Congress can only legalize things they have authority to spend money on. In other words, they can't just spend money on anything willy-nilly. It's got to be constitutionally provisioned expenditures, right?
Everything. Well, I'm not going to say everything. I think I could make a pretty strong case that virtually everything, 80% of what Congress does right now in terms of spending money, is unconstitutional. And we could review that at length based upon the plain English words of the Constitution. So Congress really is remiss, and the president's just taken all the rope they're giving him, and it's kind of like finally what they did in the 1930s with Hitler, where they says, oh, we got to give this guy supreme power because you know what, he's the only one that can save us, and so maybe he was the only one, and maybe it was a good idea, I don't know, but it violated their baseline principles. And so that didn't turn into a happily ever after story. Where we're going with what we're doing right now on every front, in my opinion, I can't think of a single shred of what's being done constitutionally right now that is on track. Congress is asleep at the switch.
In Trump's defense, though, he is trying to do some things, and he's right on a lot of targets. If Congress would, back him and support him and appropriately, guide him in that process and properly fund it, we could get back a lot of things, more so under Trump than many presidents, that's for sure.
It's got to be done by the total constitutional protocol, or we're giving away more than we're getting.
That's right, but I'm saying Congress could drive that train if they chose. And if we the people would demand the right people drive the train, we could get it done, folks. We got a lot of work to do is all I'm trying to say. And I'm not trying to get Trump off the hook, but I am trying to paint the reality of it. We've got 535 people that control the purse strings, and we the people control those 535 people. We've got to look at reality, and we're responsible as well. I'm Sam Bushman for Dr. Scott Bradley. God save our republic.